Hey everybody, welcome to the Home Care Forum podcast with your hosts, Sasha, Guillaume, and Emina Poricanin. We are on week four of, this is a long month, of October. Conference season is right around the corner, and the legislative session, though the legislators are in session, there's business being done in Albany. So we will touch on that and some other things. Emina, do you want to add anything before we jump to the lawsuits?
No, go for it.
All
Kick us
right.
off with the
Our
loss.
lawsuit, our lawsuit versus James McDonald and the Department of Health concluded on October 21, 2025, following the Second Circuit upholding the decision by the district court to dismiss the complaint or lawsuit, even though, in the opinion of the plaintiff, the opinion did not engage with most of the arguments made in the briefing or address much of the case law cited. The court decided the case in a way that is least likely to create new law or state broad rule as to discourage Supreme Court from reviewing or taking up the case. This is consistent with the common refrain from judges of not wanting to legislate from the bench, right? But for the following reason, the judges held that the CDPAP amendment neither affected the taking of private property nor disputed plaintiff's reasonable exception under their contracts. We, the judges, stated that they also hold that the state had a rational basis for preferring a single statewide fiscal intermediary. The judges also closed with or affirm the district court's judge dismissing the plaintiff's case outright. I'm going to continue on to the next, the PPL. And if you want to bring them together, by all means. But also, the Appellate Division also issued a unanimous opinion affirming the trial court decision that denied Freedom Care's bid protesting challenges to the awarding of the statewide fiscal intermediary contract to PPL by the Department of Health. Now, on the same day, the New York Post published an article that claims that Governor Hochul is targeting Freedom Care for ongoing probes into the alleged $11 billion Medicaid program scandal. Seems that number keeps increasing. In a statement from the governor's office, State Senator Rivera and Skoufis, I'm paraphrasing, are widely obsessed with attacking the governor for her effective work to rescue CDPAP from the fiscal crisis, protect home care and the people who rely on it, and save hundreds of millions of dollars per year for taxpayers. Though the lawmakers' probe has forced Public Partnership LLC to admit that one of its reps did lie under oath when she said the firm hadn't communicated with Hochul's administration prior to bidding on the CDPAP contract. So, Emina, have at it.
Well, not surprised, right? Because courts are generally very deferential to the acts of the legislature. And we have discussed these PPL litigations multiple times in the past. And I had voiced that although the arguments were very good, I have to admit, the arguments were very good. And there is certainly a level of injustice that was done by the state when this fiscal intermediary overhaul. I'm not entirely surprised at the outcome, because irrespective of the quality of the arguments, having worked for an appellate level court, I've just seen this be the trend. The judges do not want to get involved with rewriting laws. They do not want to be substituting their opinions for those of the legislature, which had passed this single FI legislation. And so, without criticizing any caliber of the arguments made by the attorneys and actually complimenting the level of the arguments and the quality of the legal position taken by the Freedom Cares and the other plaintiffs in this litigation, I'm not surprised. And so I don't think that they will be appealing and going further with either of these decisions, because that would just be throwing good money after the bad. The chances of winning on appeal for either of these is low. So it looks like the issue will die there without having created any favorable precedent for the industry. And I think I want to just make a comment about that because there's a lot of chatter about the industry as a group doesn't really do enough litigation. And if nothing else, that was one of the points of this, right? Well, we're going to sue. We're done just taking it from the State Department of Health. If we don't win the war, ultimately, maybe we create some positive law that will help us the next time the state comes after us, which they will. And I'm not sure if that was accomplished here either, right? I do applaud the efforts because I do think the industry generally sits down and just takes and takes and takes from the state in various different measures.
So I just had a quick question, Emina, just from a litigation perspective. Let's say for some reason the case did move up to Supreme Court or higher court. Uh, is the would the plaintiff have to continue the argument as is, or could they pivot to a new argument based on the court's response?
No. There's no opportunity now to create new arguments. There is only the opportunity to challenge the rationale upon which these lower courts denied the appeals.
Okay, so yeah, I mean at this point that this is match set and
Yes.
done. So
Yeah.
okay, all right. So let's move on to an announcement by Kevin Thomas, who issued an encouraging message as president and CEO, the new president and CEO of New York State Association of Health Care Providers, on his willingness to get out on the front lines of advocacy for the association and its members. We wish him the best and look forward to working with him and anyone for that matter wanting to contribute and to have positive impacts for the industry.
Thanks, Sasha. I just wanted to update our listeners on a few things that actually were the subject of the newsletter that For Work put out earlier this week. So if you're not on our list, go to forwork.com and sign up. But there are a few largely labor and employment related updates that all employers, including home care providers, need to be aware of. So first of all, for those of you down in New York City, saying as someone who sits in Albany most of the time, you should be aware that the New York City Council is looking to require pay data reporting for employers. So these are currently proposed bills that passed the New York City Council, and they are required to be signed by the mayor before they officially become law. But collectively, the two bills would require large employers to report detailed pay data by race and gender. These measures are designed to enhance what the council is calling pay equity transparency across the city's workforce. And just at a high level, a lot of employers, those with 100 or more employees, are required already to participate in EEO1 reporting, which is more comprehensive than this. The EEO1 does not have much teeth, to be clear, in the sense that if you do fail to comply, the EEOC doesn't come knocking on your door, doesn't audit you, doesn't have penalties like the Department of Labor would for failure to pay wages. So it's out there, it's a requirement, but no teeth for enforcement. And so this at the city level would be similar, but less because EEO1 has more categories than just race and gender that have to be disclosed and reported. And so there would also be a certification and compliance requirement that do carry monetary penalties, okay, if they're not adhered to. So the law would require New York City covered employers to not only file a report, but the employers would have to submit a signed certification statement confirming the accuracy and completion of the submission. And then the designated city agency would publish an annual list of non-compliant employers on its website. So that perhaps more than the monetary penalty is enough incentive to comply. As we saw a few years ago, the city published without any really advance notice and then disclosed it to newspaper publications, a list of home care agencies that supposedly were not paying their wages properly and that had been found by the Department of Labor to have violated the law. For those of you who were affected by this or who are familiar with the subject, will recall that the city actually had wrong data. Nonetheless, that wrong data got picked up by newspaper outlets, and it was very embarrassing for quite a lot of home care agencies to be listed as violators of wage and hour laws. So, this is another pay transparency measure. I don't like these personally. The New York City Council constantly looks for ways to make it difficult for employers to be in business in the city. But keep a lookout on this. And if it does come into effect, we will be sure to give you more information about that. The other big update that I wanted you to be aware of, if you have not already, is that the unemployment insurance rate, the benefit, is going from $504 per week, $869 per week. Okay. And when you do the math about what your home health aides or PCAs are making, why would anybody work when they can be collecting this much potentially per week? So the standards for who qualifies have not changed, but this is effective immediately. And it is going to be applied to the first 13,000 in wages per employee that employers are reporting.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I forgot to bring this up in the past couple episodes because it blew my mind when I saw her announce it. The governor talked about the fact that we just paid off the unemployment tax debt, whatever, this year, and I was looking forward to a nice decrease because we bore the burden of paying off that debt. We're just going to find another way to spend it. I think people having more money in their account to be able to live. New York is an expensive place to live. But I think we did learn from COVID that when you did pay people that amount of money, they really didn't want to work. So
Right.
you're kind of prolonging the pain to the employers in New York. So I don't want to come off as anti-employee or what have you, but I think the data should be studied and revisited. And this decision doesn't seem as if it did take that into account. So.
I will also, just before we leave the subject of unemployment insurance, remind home care agencies of a passage of the unemployment insurance law that came out, I would say at this point, maybe 2 years ago, that allows individuals who experience a drop in their hours below 30 per week to qualify for partial unemployment benefits. And now with the new threshold, if their weekly wages fall below the new 869 amount versus the 504 amount, employees may qualify for benefits. So this is even more of an incentive for your coordinators to schedule these people, right? If the patient is dying, get them scheduled and make sure that you are documenting efforts that you have attempted to reschedule these people. So if they're denying additional shifts and all of a sudden they're claiming unemployment because their hours have been reduced through no fault of their own. The only way that you, as the employer, can defeat these claims is to prove that no, actually, the hours were still available. Yes, that patient died, but we quickly reoffered a new shift, new hours under substantially the same circumstances. Now, the aides are going to say, well, this was a further case. I would have had to take 3 trains instead of one, right? Or this was a second shift and I'm used to working the first shift, or something like that. So you have to offer them a case that is as similar to the one that just terminated as possible to defeat those but arguments about why they didn't accept the new case. And I will say this because this is becoming the bane of my existence, coordinators. I there's at least a coordinator issue once a week. You need to train these people. They have so many responsibilities that home care operators put on them. And these folks have so little training and management support and guidance and mentorship. And people, humans, whether that's in the home or in the workplace, they learn by modeling behaviors that they see either there or they're coming in having seen poorly modeled behaviors that now you have to clean up and reteach. So, anyways, my rant on coordinators is over, but this is something that they're probably going to be dealing with, right? Hey, my patient died. Okay, do not let these aides linger then out there. Follow up with them and offer them a new case. Moving on to the next subject of employment law updates before Sasha chokes me to keep it going. Just an FYI, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, if you recall, as employers under the Biden administration, there were these threats to and actually passage of rules and standards about non-compete agreements and restrictive covenants generally. The Trump administration is coming out and saying, we're not going to follow any of that. We're going to still enforce anti-competition laws and we're going to look at things, but we're going to be a little bit more open-minded about this stuff than what our predecessor was. So that's actually semi-decent news for employers. You are off the hook of having to comply with the stringent non-compete requirements that were here under the Biden administration. And so the lesser federal standards will apply. They're still going to be looking at generally the same things. They're going to be looking at, are these skilled or non-skilled workers? Is this non-compete really necessary? Is it just to stifle ordinary competition, or is it to prevent what should be a competitive market? And then the FTC will still be considering if there are other alternatives to secure the confidential information or whatever the proprietary interest is that the business is seeking to protect with a non-compete. So, for example, if the business can get away or sufficiently protect its assets and interests with a non-solicitation agreement, then the non-compete may not be necessary because the non-compete is the strictest of the restrictive covenants. It prevents the employee from working for a competitive industry or competitive employer. Whereas a non-solicitation clause would allow that employee to work for a second home care agency, for example, except in that second home care agency, the employee would not be allowed to solicit or contact or take business away from their prior employer, and they would not be allowed to poach patients, contracts, or other employees, right? So those are all the same factors that the prior administration looked at when evaluating whether non-competes are fair or not, and that will continue to be the case here. Although honestly, with the dwindling federal workforce, first it was Elon Musk, and now it's just the Trump administration slashing things. I have no idea who's actually going to be enforcing any of this. Last but not least, the update on labor and employment side that I want to share with you is the New York City proposal to expand the New York City safe and sick leave requirements starting in 2026. So this is again another one that would apply to just New York City employers or those employers with employees in New York City. So the business may be based elsewhere, but if the employees are working in New York City, they would be covered. So this is still a bill. So the council passed it, but it has not been signed into law. So if passed, this is a big if, there are expansions of the public disaster closures, workplace violence, caregiving, and then legal and substance abuse matters that would allow employees to take leave. So the reason for which leave could be given and granted is being expanded. The bill also introduces a new entitlement of 32 hours of unpaid sick leave and safe leave that would be provided at hire and on the first day of each calendar year. Right now, employees have to accumulate, so they don't immediately get to receive paid or unpaid sick time from their employer. As expanded, again, not signed into law yet, employees would immediately have 32 hours of unpaid sick leave every year. And then there would be an addition of 20 hours of paid prenatal leave per rolling 52-week period. This would be in addition to the regular paid and sick leave requirement of either 40 or 56 hours. And employers can require that this be used in 1 hour increments per day. Remember, there is a state law now that requires 20 hours of prenatal leave per year. DOL has clarified it. It's just for women. It is not for men who want to go to prenatal appointments in emotional support of their pregnant partners. So this is just for women who need prenatal care. There is a state law that already gives employees this benefit. So I don't know that this would be that the city proposal would be adding anything, but God forbid that Hochul tries to outdo the New York City Council. So, they had to add this in there. Also, the bill would supposedly streamline employee rights. Under all of these laws, employees would continue to have the right to require safe and sick leave for personal events, and they would remain protected from retaliation for doing so. But there is a temporary schedule change act, and so employees covered by that would be allowed to use the sick leave entitlements a little bit more freely. That is the summary that I have for this week's episode of Labor and Employment Changes. There are others, obviously. I mean, one that I think is fascinating, and it's only a matter of time that it comes to New York, is menopause leave. New Hampshire passed a law that allows covered employees to take time off for menopause related issues. Sasha, your video is still on, so we can see your face for those of you who are tuning into YouTube. I will not go into that because that's New Hampshire and we focus largely on New York providers. I will turn it over to you because you did have some updates you wanted to share with us as well.
The
We
razor
do have
wire,
we do have menopausal women listening to
yeah,
this, so
yeah,
use the words very
listen,
wisely.
the high wire line full of razor wire that I would need to walk to speak about this makes me want to just avoid it. But it's just interesting that I've had experience being asked to go work from home and can they make up time? And I'm guessing that's how this law came about. So I will just stop there. Let me move on to fact that on October 9th, as part of Governor Hochul's broader affordability agenda, the New York State Division of Budget released a fiscal year 2027 budget call letter. This is calling for agencies, the departments, to keep spending flat and look to repeal and reform regulations that are outdated and obsolete as the state faces a projected $34.3 billion shortfall through 2029 as a result of the big beauty bill, right? Budget Director Blake Washington is asking, again, paraphrasing, agenda budget for 2027 to not exceed the total uh, the enacted budget for 2026 funding levels. So essentially a 2-year budget, right, excluding one-time investments. Now, Fair Access Initiative, the association that I'm part of, and we encourage you to join us, has had a meeting earlier this week with the governor's office. We met with Blake Washington, the New York State budget director, and his staff from the Division of Budgets. They were very receptive to our proposals. They appreciated that Fair Access Initiative were bringing something different to the table. They asked us to return with our proposal. They were so receptive to the first proposal that I decided, why not? Go for it. So I went for and proposed a second idea that we've been mulling over at the Fair Access Initiative. And they like that as well. So we have some transformative proposals in the works that Fair Access Initiative will be presenting and working with the governor's office and division of budgets on. Fair Access Initiative has already involved other associations, the union, the industry vendors to hash out our proposal. We will likely be previewing these proposals at the home care show scheduled for November 18th and November 19th, where we will be doing a podcast in front of a live audience. So we hope that you are in attendance. So it's been a good week. For me personally, inside and outside of home care. Amina's excited to work with me on some of these things outside of home care. But that is it. That is it. It's a teaser. People are going to be wondering what it is, but I'll let you know when we're ready, and know that Amin is involved. Maybe. Anyway, I will end it here. This has been the Home Care Forum podcast with your hosts, Sasha Guillaume and Emina Poricanin. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.